Hello, everybody. Welcome along to the Event Industry News Podcast. My name is James Dixon, and as ever, I wish you a very good morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you tune in to today's Event Industry News Podcast from. And on the show today, we're talking about NFTs. A lot of people, not just in the events industry, but in the wider consumer markets, will have heard of the term NFT, non-fungible token. Certainly in the last 12 months or so. They've been around for a little longer than that. I know a bit about them, but certainly not as much as our guest who's going to be talking on the podcast today. And we're going to be finding out a little bit more about what they're doing. Our guest is Ryan Kenny. Ryan is the CEO of Seatlab and joins the podcast for the first time today. Ryan, very warm welcome to the Event Industry News Podcast.
Morning, James. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem at all. And as I said very briefly there, I like to keep the introductions fairly short before bringing our guest onto the podcast. Non-fungible token, NFT, something that people have become familiar with as a term, although many people may not be completely au fait as to what they actually are and the sort of the inner workings of them and what they mean. Maybe we should start with a little bit of a potted history of what an NFT is, first of all, before we get into what you guys are doing with it.
Yeah, no problem at all. So an NFT is essentially an asset that's stored on a blockchain. So it's provable, the ownership is provable, and the NFT itself could be anything from an audio file, a video file, a static image. We've mostly seen the popularity rise in the art sector at the minute. So you might have come across Bored Apes or the like. So that's obviously just a static image NFT, but the technology can be used for anything really. And we're hoping to give real utility to NFT technology in the form of ticketing. So.
Well, there we go, and that brings us in nicely. A nice, short, sweet explanation. Seatlab, and I'm reading here from the pitch document that's on your website at the moment, so anybody can go and have a little look at this. After you listen to today's podcast, head over and have a little look at this. But Seatlab solving some of the ticketing industry's biggest problems with our NFT ticketing marketplace. And something you mentioned in that explanation of NFT is proof of ownership. It's a provable digital entity, isn't it? And that's key in what you guys are doing.
Yeah, exactly. There's quite a few benefits really. You can probably separate into three main categories of advantages. So you've got, obviously the ticketing industry's current problems. You've got big problems with touts at the minute. You may have come across it before if you tried to buy a ticket to a big event or a concert. Touts snap them up so quickly. The real fans haven't even got a chance to buy them these days. Similarly with bots as well, there's a big problem with bots in the industry, which you're probably well aware. And also ticket fraud as well. So, it's like 12% of tickets are actually counterfeit or fraudulent these days, which is obviously quite a lot really, isn't it? So I think by nature of NFT tickets and blockchain, we can actually prove ownership of those things, in our case, tickets, and, verify the ownership really. So hopefully we're going to eradicate a lot of those problems.
And of course, I'm just referring maybe to a personal experience just yesterday, actually, and it comes to digital train tickets. Most people will be familiar with having a digital ticket either in their Apple Wallet or in their on their Android phone, some sort of digital ticket. And I was traveling back from London with my two teenage sons, and the oldest one needed to go on to Leeds, and we were getting off a couple of stops earlier, so I quickly bought a ticket for him to stay on the train and then just messaged it to him. So that ticket was essentially bought by me, but then transferred straight away to somebody else with no requirement that they had to prove that they purchased it or anything. They just had to show it and the conductor would scan it. And I suppose that despite the advances that the ticketing industry has made in recent years with digital ticketing, there is still very much this ease of transfer that can take place, isn't there, in the current marketplace?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, definitely. I think it's not so much a problem when you're talking about train tickets and tickets like that, but when you're talking about large scale events that typically sell out very quickly, it is a massive problem. That's something we're trying to solve. Obviously, with NFT tickets, we're doing some pretty cool stuff at the minute. With there's lots of things you can do with NFT tickets. They're called smart contracts, which is basically the programmable contract behind an NFT asset. And with that, you can actually program in lots of different variables and rules. One of those rules can be a non-transfer as well. So, personally, we're trying to tie an NFT wallet to a device. So actually will eradicate bots, mass buying tickets and distributing them on a secondary market, for example.
That's now I'm just processing that. So eradicating the bots. Okay. Yeah. I get that. And buying them en masse.
Yeah.
In a practical level, then, if somebody hasn't used or purchased an NFT before and suddenly they went to buy a ticket for the next big tour that they wanted, concert that they wanted to go and watch, or a festival. How does the NFT manifest itself, in terms of an app on their phone? Do they need a slightly different digital wallet to the one that is native within mobile device operating systems now?
Yes, exactly. So we're building our own NFT ticket wallet, which it's very much like your Apple Wallet. It's got the NFC capability, so that's the near field communication scanning. We're essentially creating our own NFT ticket wallet, and that will be a standalone mobile application, available on iOS and Android, obviously. The reason we're doing that really is just to it gives us a lot more control over the ticket. We can actually verify who the person is, who the wallet address is. There's lots of verification that comes with actually tying it to a device. And also the main benefit is obviously stopping touts being able to mass buy them. And they literally have to buy lots of mobile phones with lots of mobile numbers. And, they physically have to sell the phone if they wanted to operate in that market. It's not too far removed from what we see today with digital tickets, to be honest. I mean, as a company, we're trying to make it as simple as we possibly can do for people who realistically don't really care what NFTs are. They just want a functional ticket. And that's essentially what we're trying to do. We're trying to make the whole process as easy as possible. A lot of people we speak to now are crypto native people, but that's not realistically our audience. Our audience will be the mass market. So as a company, we're trying to make it super, super easy for people just to onboard and buy and use a functional ticket.
And I guess for users, for the end user of these, they don't ultimately need to know what an NFT is. They don't really even need to know how it works. For them, it's just knowing that the ticket that they have purchased, if they do wish to sell it on, that they can do so, that the organizer is in control of that. It's not really probably going to make any obvious difference to the process of the ticket buying process to the end user.
Not massively, no. So, I mean, typical Web3 applications, it is a little bit different because you actually connect with a wallet. Whereas what we're doing, although we are using wallets, we're trying to sort of bridge the gap between sort of traditional ticketing, like the future of ticketing, really. Because personally, I think if we make that jump too quick, it's just going to be essentially too difficult for people to buy. We're trying to make that really, really easy. It should be easy for people to use. That's the main goal.
What I've just written down the word control here. It's something you mentioned in a few minutes ago. I'm curious to know sort of what level of control an organizer does have over it, because obviously there is the ability, by the sounds of things, to effectively lock the ticket and say, once that person's bought it, you could potentially offer nothing. You can't sell it. You can't do anything with it. But it also sounds like that there is an element of control that the organizer could dictate over that ticket as to what happens, where it can go to, how much it could be sold for. Is that right?
Most definitely, yeah. So this is one of the big attractions with smart contracts and NFT tickets. So as an event organizer, you've got way, way, way more control over, over a ticket and what happens to it, the price. It can be literally setting a ceiling price or setting a maximum resale price. A big point is the royalty split. So as an artist or event organizer, you can actually program in a percentage royalty split into each ticket. So for example, you could say, okay, for any future resale of this ticket, I want to receive 10%, 20%, whatever it is, and that will get sent straight to your wallet. So if that event show sells out and the ticket, you do allow ticket trading, that can go onto the secondary market, and then that, once it's resold, the programmed in percentage will be sent back to the artist or event organizer. It's a big problem with the ticket industry today, really. The actual artist or the person actually organising the event doesn't really benefit from any secondary sale. They have very, very little control once that initial sale is made. And that's what we're trying to improve, I suppose. We're giving event organisers the tools to be able to do a lot more with the ticket, and hopefully get a lot more revenue as well.
Well, that's a really interesting point, because it's not. I know of the problems with the secondary ticketing market and what it means for fans, particularly, and the price is being driven up by bots and by organizations buying them en masse and then selling them on. So, but I've never considered actually what that means for the artist, in terms of they will agree a fee with a promoter, for a particular gig or an event or whatever it may be, and that fee is ultimately based on the face value of that ticket, isn't it? If you can still call it that. There's very few printed tickets, but the face value, what ultimately it's going to be sold for initially, is what the whole revenue is based on for the artist, isn't it? And of course, like you say, anything that's made on the secondary market is essentially going to the ticket provider, usually through some of the secondary websites.
Yeah, no, exactly. And you can have as many royalty splits as you want as well. So it could be that you have, 5% to the original artist or the guest speaker or whatever it is, 10% to the event organizer, You could even have investors in there as well. So we've got some cool plans for the future to allow investors to actually invest in the events and then recoup their investment via smart tickets. So you can actually have as many royalty splits into one ticket as you want, really. So, as you rightly said, suddenly you could maybe negotiate lower fees for people because you can guarantee a section of that revenue for any secondary sale as well, So it's got lots of use cases, really.
Is the, on a practical basis, is the royalty split, or the actually sort of not paid out but split in real time? So unlike now where somebody would sell tickets for an event, that big pot of money would come in, they would do all their bookkeeping, their finances, their budgeting based on the event, and then split it out and pay suppliers, pay artists, pay people who are owed a split from that revenue. How does that split work from an accounting point of view?
Yeah, it's real time. So as soon as that transaction is made, it gets split between those royalty addresses. So you can look at it two ways, really. You could link a wallet address of the artist or event organizer, and they would receive the funds literally instantly. Or you could create a secondary wallet, which actually you have control of, but that's just siphoned off to go to the artist eventually. So you can either split it off instantly and pay it out instantly, or you could send it to a different, essentially a bank account or a wallet address. And that could just be divvied out after the event, for example, or whenever you wanted. So,
is the intention with Seatlab to take on some of the sort of the big names in the ticket industry, or is the intention ultimately to develop technology that they can utilize within their platforms?
Well, I should probably be careful what I say, really, but yeah, we are trying to solve some of these big problems, and those problems are caused by certain people, So I would say, without trying to dig a hole, there is some direct competition there. We are trying to create something that is just utilizing better technology, Like some of the current big players, they don't really want to change. It's in their benefit. The secondary market is controlled by them, So they're in no rush to bring technology like this to the forefront, because it doesn't really benefit them. Whereas it does benefit everyone else. So there's companies like us now trying to, produce this technology and give it to people so they can utilize it. So I suppose, it is in competition with those bigger players, but I think it's to the benefit of everyone, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I know it's sort of, I'm asking you how long's a piece of string in some respects, but do you anticipate maybe then that the initial route to market with something like this with smaller events, one-off gigs, one-off festivals, stuff that basically you can work directly with the organizer with sort of very, very little red tape and admin, because some of the bigger events, with the greatest respect, have got so many more people and entities involved in terms of organizations and companies. Are you hoping to maybe get this out on a smaller level initially to prove that actually it works?
I say you could say that, yes. I mean, we're having some quite sizable conversations now with some, massive global brands. So although I think it will be walk before we can run, I don't think it's by any means going to be, okay, let's start small. I think, once we've launched, it will be, rapid climb, trying on board as many people as we can, really. I think there will be difficulties with some larger events, as you rightly said. We probably understand this industry a little bit more. There is some deals which are just impenetrable, really, that the deals are done between a couple of parties, and there isn't much room for people like us to get involved. But I think, that's probably only 10% of the market, or, maybe a little bit more. There's still a vast opportunity for us to capitalize on. And I think a big part of what we're doing is education at the minute. This technology is very new. We have to educate people on the benefits. I don't think it'll be very long before everyone starts to realize, hang on a minute, we can do so much more with our tickets, So yeah, to answer your question, I think it will be, I don't think we start small, but I think it'll just be being realistic. Sorry.
Well, once an organizer starts using the Seatlab tech, for want of a better phrase, is the programming of a given ticket. So let's say there are 3 different parties that need to benefit from the sale of a ticket. Would they do all that sort of initial programming? Is the intention that they can do that themselves from an admin console, or do they actually have to come to you and work with you to do that?
No, they can do it themselves. So we've spent, we've worked in the ticketing industry for a number of years now. We do understand the tools that are required to effectively sell tickets, So we're putting all those tools into a really easy to use dashboard alongside the new technology like the smart contracts and things, and even the production of the NFT ticket itself. It's a very easy step-by-step guide or process for you to go through. And you can do all of that using our dashboard. We've actually spent a long time trying to simplify it as much as we can do, so anyone can use it. I always try and think, like, could my mum use this, for example? So we're trying to actually make it really usable for everyone. And as I said earlier, I don't think our initial audience will be crypto native people. So we almost have to do that. We have to make it easy for people to use. But yeah, essentially we offer all the tools that are required to actually do this. So and hopefully do it really easily as well.
Crypto native is a great phrase. It's something, more and more people are becoming savvy with that, aren't they?
Yeah.
But I suppose one thing that you may have to consider is that in the wider events industry, when it comes to the consumers, you've got a demographic of people, 15,000 people buying tickets to see the Eagles at Leeds Arena are going to be a certain demographic. I'm not pigeonholing the Eagles, everybody, by any stretch, but it may be a different demographic to a club night at Ministry of Sound, for example. And so does that play a part in your thinking at all, or is it come back to what I asked earlier, where ultimately the end user is maybe not even going to notice what they're doing, and it's just buying a ticket like they've always done?
Yeah, you're spot on, really. I mean, there will be some differences, but yeah, essentially, especially for the user standpoint, we're trying to make it as easy as possible and trying to remove any sort of friction or barrier to entry for us. That idea has evolved since we've even started this project a number of months ago. We have to sort of ground ourselves a little bit and say, we can't just make everything so futuristic, it's unusable. Our demographic is just event attendees, and that's such a vast audience. We have to cater to all. So although on the event organizer side, there's new tools. I'd imagine not a lot many people have actually used smart contracts and royalty splits and things like that. So there is some new tools for them to use, but as I said, the UI and the UX is hopefully super easy, so it's not so much of a challenge for them. But on the user side, yeah, we're trying to keep it as simple as possible and as close to a traditional ticketing setup as we can do. Obviously we're not using PDFs anymore and things like that. It will be a digital ticket, but it's only an app download, so people are used to downloading apps for things these days. So I don't think it's going to be a massive challenge for users. I think as I said, the harder bit is just educating people on the benefits of why they want to use this from an event organizer standpoint. So
I've got two questions that I've scribbled down here.
Yeah.
One is to do with connection and one's to do with access. We'll come to access in a moment, but connection first of all. This might be a really stupid question, but does the nature of the NFT require it to have a live connection from a mobile device? So in a big event space, for example, mobile connection, cellular connection is often really poor when you get 15,000 people in a space. Does that affect the NFT at all?
It doesn't affect it. There obviously will need to be an internet connection because it is a scanning. We're basically going to build two applications. There's going to be an online version and offline version. So the offline version will cater to this because it's something we've experienced before. Although I wouldn't say that's going to be our sort of showpiece scanning ability. The showpiece is the NFC scanning, which does require an internet connection. But I actually listened to your last podcast, and there's a guy talking about Wi-Fi boxes in the hardware. So
yeah.
I think we've solved a lot of those problems already with the hardware that's available in the market. But yeah, we have thought about this issue. We've been in a situation before where we've dealt with festivals that are literally in the middle of the field. So we have thought about this, and yeah, we will offer an offline ability for the scanning as well. But our sort of showpiece scanning ability will be the NFC stuff, which will require an internet connection of sorts.
Yeah, and sort of 17, 18 minutes into the podcast, I now mentioned 5G for the first time. That's going to play based on what you've just said. That is ultimately going to have a huge benefit to the development of this type of technology within the event spaces.
Yeah, of course. I mean, what we're doing doesn't have to have internet connection. I feel like, how many events actually don't have a good internet connection these days when you're attending? It's not too many, really. So I feel like if we're trying to change our whole solution to cater for that sort of 5% of offline, not having online abilities, then I think that's a bit of a skewed way to look at it. But I think things are only improving with connections, aren't they? So
yeah, that's interesting you say that, because as soon as you mentioned it, I think, but you're absolutely right. We are getting closer to this scenario where it's just going to be a given. In 10 years' time, there will be virtually nowhere in the world where you're going to go where you can't get on the internet, whether it's better Wi-Fi in airports, in hotels, where if you're going on holiday, but just mobile connections are going to be much more stable. They're pretty good now. There's very few places I can go now and not get on the internet at some point. So if we're looking at this as a longer term solution for the industry, we probably don't really need to have the internet connectivity debate like we had 10 years ago.
I'd agree with that. I still think it's it's a valid topic to mention. It's worth considering, but I think especially as you rightly said, we're trying to build something that's long term here, that's going to take us into the next generation of ticketing. I think we're not going to get there unless we have good internet connections as a basic, you know. So I feel like that's a problem that, you know, we as a company shouldn't be so hell-bent on trying to solve, because there already is great solutions out there which enable any venue to have good Wi-Fi, isn't there, really?
Yeah. The second thing I wrote down, I mentioned, was access. And I'm kind of firing weird scenarios here maybe at you, but if somebody, when somebody goes to get access to an event that's used this particular ticketing platform, how does the process work? You know, just describe to us the actual process of gaining entry to there, what the attendee has to do, and what the person who is scanning the tickets has to do. How does that work? And I've got a follow-up question to that. I'll let you answer that first of all.
Yeah, well, it's quite simple, really. So it's not too dissimilar from what you do now. You know, there's two devices. We're going down the lines of two smart devices. So most people have modern day phones these days. So, you know, the user would turn up with their smartphone. They would open their ticket wallet. They would present the ticket to the scanner or the staff on the gate. The gate would have an admin application, which essentially is a scanner app, and they interact with each other via NFC. And that's simply it. You know, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. We're just trying to get away from QR codes and PDFs, but digital tickets with NFC scanning. So it's as simple as two smart devices in close proximity, and you're granted entry. Then that NFT is marked as used. Then, so obviously, like a traditional ticket, once it's been scanned, it won't allow re-entry unless you've set that up. But yeah, so that's essentially how it works.
Oh, and again, this is a far-fetched question, but is there anything to stop the actual device being transferred from person to person?
Well, so physically selling the device.
Physically buying, you know, a cheap Android phone, buying the ticket, it being on a wallet application that's on that device, and then the secondary market physically selling that device.
I mean, we've thought about this as well. So yeah, I think it's a valid response. I mean, personally, I don't think that's going to. It's not going to be scalable, really. So you might have a few touts that try and do that. I mean, if we're limiting the amount of tickets a wallet can hold, let's say a wallet can only buy 2 or 3 tickets, you know, it is plausible that people could buy hundreds of devices and sell them like that. But we are working on some stuff now to try and limit that as well. And you know, that wallets could be tied to personalities as well, or persons as well. So there's an added verification layer there as well. So yeah, it's a very valid question, but yeah, we're trying to solve that one.
And I guess, you know, when you have things like face identification now, fingerprint identification on phones, you do have a layer of security sort of built in there that would, I mean, ultimately, because of that, just reposting, you know, offering a riposte to my own question, touts would have to really go some way, wouldn't they, to buy, you know, at the level that they're buying tickets at the moment for the secondary market, they'd have to be buying devices, thousands at a time, then having somebody programming them and setting them up. Just the economics of doing that and the logistics of doing it. I think the touts are going to look at it and go, nah.
Definitely. I feel like, you know, we can't say we're going to eliminate it completely, but I think if we can make it, you know, incredibly difficult for them to operate, then that's what we will do, you know. So yeah, there's lots of things we're doing to limit that. You know, they would have to, as you rightly said, buy thousands of devices. Then they'd obviously come into our, you know, if they're trying to purchase, you know, tickets on one device, on one marketplace with loads of devices, then our bot protection would capture that as well. So we're just trying to make loads of barriers for them to operate, really. So
yeah, as somebody told me recently, the old onion security, you know, you build up as many layers as possible and you've got something that's actually quite tough to get through.
That's it.
Yeah, a good analogy. Tell me about the timeline and the process of actually developing this, you know, in terms of R&D, if you can call it that, you know, programming, research, all the rest of it. How long has it been in the pipeline for you guys to have the NFT as a real sort of viable option for ticketing?
A long old time, simply. I first started in blockchain about nearly 10 years ago.
Right.
So that was when Bitcoin literally first came around. So I've always had a fascination with cryptocurrency and blockchain technology. You know, that was my first business while I was at university many years ago. I think realistically, I was just young, didn't want to get a proper job, so I was trying to make internet money, and I stumbled across Bitcoin. It was great fun. Yeah, obviously I left university and entered the real world. Worked in a collection of different areas, and then we were actually got quite popular in the event sector with our marketing agency. So we were actually operating across the UK and the US. We were running marketing campaigns for loads of big concert promoters and large scale tours. Obviously, off the back of that, we were using traditional ticketing companies, and we we always felt like there was something that could be slightly improved, whether it was the cost or
Yeah.
lack of customization or whatever it was. We thought we could do something slightly better. So that's what we did. We left. Sorry, we didn't leave. We embarked on creating our own ticketing platform, which was about 4 years ago.
Hmm.
It's a bit of a long story, but I'm getting to the point.
No, no, no.
so, yeah,
Far
so
away.
it's about 4 years ago. We started a traditional ticketing company, and obviously, I've always been trying to plug this. How can we incorporate this new blockchain technology? How can we improve this process? And yeah, with the NFT boom last year, it just became feasible. Really, the technology was there. The sort of I'll say the mass market, but people were getting familiar with this technology, and suddenly
Yeah.
it was quite feasible for us to pull this off. So it's been 10 years. I'll say I've been trying to think about how society can benefit this technology, and probably 4 years in ticketing, and then realistically, the last couple of years is when we
Yeah.
decided to make a real go of this. And definitely last year is when we decided to pull the trigger.
Sure, yeah. And how much does it help a business like yours when it comes to, sourcing funding, to sourcing potential clients to use this technology, when we see terms like non-fungible token and NFT appearing in mainstream media and on the news? So we see things like, the first tweet, being sold as an NFT and things like that.
Yeah,
Does it have a big impact on a business like yours?
most definitely. Well, actually, I'd say that, but then I still have lots of conversations where people don't really understand it. So and that's yes, it does help incredibly. I think if I was to pitch this years ago, people would have just looked at me like I was crazy. Much like they did 10 years ago when I was trying to pitch
Yeah.
Bitcoin. It's like it was almost too early. Whereas now I feel like, yeah, people at least have heard of it. So it opens the door for us explaining the benefits, even if they don't understand them right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is opening the door for us really.
I guess there's a confidence thing as well that brings, is that, if with the greatest respect, they have a guy who knows what he's talking about come and explain it to them, and they think, oh, I still don't get it. But then when they turn on the news that evening, they see that the CEO of Twitter has sold his first ever tweet. Think, oh, okay, there must be some mileage to this. If
Yeah,
something as big as that and as as well seen as that in the consumer marketplace is doing it. I guess it
no, most definitely.
maybe if it's not fully understanding what it is, there's a confidence that will give to people who see potential but don't know what it is.
No, I definitely agree, but I'd also, on the flip side to that, I feel like NFTs have only really been used for art purposes at the minute,
Mhm.
and that's in some areas getting a bit bad reputation. The fact they're not very eco-friendly, or people are spending hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars on pictures of apes. It's like it does have its disadvantages for
Yeah.
people. People like us who are trying to offer a credible utility for this technology. Um, but yeah, I think it's as I was saying earlier, it's the education piece, isn't it? People have heard of NFTs, maybe some people in a bad light, but it's up to people like us to say this is more than just a picture of an ape. We can do so much with this technology, and especially with the events industry and tickets, it's such a natural evolution. So
Mm.
yeah.
Are there any you clearly know a lot about it in a lot of detail because of the time you've spent working with this technology. Aside from the ticketing marketplace, where else are things like NFTs potentially going to rear themselves and manifest themselves in to consumers in the next sort of decade?
Oh, that's a big question. I feel like personally, I've been excited for smart contracts in the insurance markets and the real estate markets. Because it almost takes out that middleman. There's a new layer of trust that can be built with a smart contract because it's programmed, right? So areas where there's like an exchange
Hmm.
are rife for innovation like this, or a proof of ownership. Again, it's rife for this innovation. So I think I'm very interested to see what happens to society over the next 10 years, but I honestly do think it will touch most industries in some aspects, and definitely, every 6 months this technology advances so fast. It's literally last year we even heard about NFTs and it's taken over the world. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'll almost combust when I think about how much could change. It's like it's crazy,
Yeah.
but
Well,
I do think it'll touch everything.
as soon as you've offered that explanation there, the first thing I thought of was like something like car ownership.
Exactly. Yeah.
You still when you buy a car of someone privately or from anywhere,
Yeah. Yeah.
you get the piece of paper and you have to post it off,
Yeah.
to the DVLA to register your ownership.
Definitely.
That whole process surely could be um, more secure. For a
Yeah.
start, people are not
Definitely.
rifling around in the back of a drawer because they've not seen that piece of paper in years trying to find it. And also, it's instant. You're not waiting
Yeah.
for it to be posted, processed, adminned, and then sent back.
Yeah.
Straight away. I mean, and that's probably one of probably 100 examples that if we sat down with a piece of paper and scribbled on, we could come up with.
Definitely, yeah. It'll just touch everything. Honestly, I think everything from like medical records to, as you said, like buying and selling cars, literally anything. Even wider stuff like the insurance and things like that. I think there's so many areas which are just ripe for this technology. Yeah, we're already seeing it now. There is, as every week goes on, there's more brands getting involved in this. Mostly from still an art point of view, but I think people are actually starting to realise the implications and the benefits of this technology, where we can deploy it. So yeah, it'll be exciting to see for sure.
It will certainly be exciting to see. We've been talking on the podcast today to Ryan Kenny. Ryan is the CEO at Seatlab, and we've been talking about their NFT technology and how they are solving some of the ticketing industry's biggest problems with their NFT ticketing marketplace. Ryan, if people want to explore this in a little bit more detail and find out more about what you guys are up to at Seatlab, where do they go? What do they need to do?
Yeah, check out our website. It's at seatlabnft.com, or follow us on Twitter. We're most active on Twitter, Discord, and also on the website as well. So
fantastic. Yeah. And if you're listening to this, head over to eventityournews.com, because we put up links on the actual video of today's podcast if you want to just double check those website and excuse me, Twitter addresses. But as Ryan says, seatlabnft.com is the website to go to. And as I mentioned very briefly at the start of today's episode, I've been referring to I think they're a pitch document, as it's referred on your website, Ryan, if I'm right.
Yeah,
really correct. Useful PDF, everybody. So if you want to find out and look into it in a little bit more detail in your own time after today's podcast, why not start with that particular document? So yeah, our thanks to Ryan. And as I said, if you're watching today's podcast on the website, don't forget, you can listen to audio versions of all of our podcasts just by going to wherever you get your podcasts from and searching for Event Industry News. Of course, if you are listening to this today already, don't forget to head over to eventindustrynews.com, and you can check out all the latest news, features and supplements on the website, as well as watching video versions of all of our podcasts. Excuse me, little tickle in the throat today. Our thanks once again to Ryan Kenny, CEO at Seatlab, for talking to us today. Ryan, it's been great to have you on the show. Hope to catch up with you again in future to find out how this technology is developing. So look forward to seeing you on the podcast again, further down the road.
Thanks very much, James. It's been great speaking to you.
Thanks very much, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you all on the next episode. Goodbye, everyone.